the town board agenda for Monday night for consideration. It's a memorandum of understanding that deals with land use characteristics and area considerations with the Mensch Partnership. There is a secondary MOU which deals with UBMD and an ambulatory center. And there's a third MOU which deals with sale of property west of the North Town Center with Uniland Corporation. And while we've been deliberating all of those things for the past couple of years, we've also been trying to get a sense of what this community really needs or wants out of a Central Park. And as we're getting close to scope and thought we needed some help with form, we brought in Victor Dover and Amy Groves from Dover Kohl and their team. They spent the past week or so really well ensconced in all things Amherst, but from Miami, and from Jersey, right, Amy? Is that right? I got right? So working remotely with all of us, I think they've come up with some pretty interesting concepts and concepts that, for the most part, hold true to the discussions that we have had with all of you over the past couple of years. And it's a wonderful opportunity for us all to step forward together, take the next steps in this project and this approach. So I'm going to thank Victor and Amy up front for all the work they've done. I also want to recognize the work of our planning department, Dan Howard and Ellen Cost, who I think are on the call here somewhere, Kim Applement and Jeff Sikowski, who have been sort of acting as project managers through this whole week. They've done a great job of bringing a lot of people together and bringing a lot of ideas together in pretty short order. So I'm going to shut up now. I'm going to let Victor and Amy take over, talk about the work that they've done, and we'll have an opportunity for some questions and answers after that. Is that fair, Victor?
Sounds great. We'll let Amy get us started, and then I'll pick up partway through, and we'll do the final parts of it together, occasionally calling on members of our team.
Great. Well, thanks and welcome, everyone. I see we've got around 50 people on the call, so it's great to see many of the faces from earlier this week. So, as mentioned, our focus this week has been on the Central Park site. So you'll see this map a lot over the next 40 minutes or so. This is the existing conditions. All of our meetings this week started out, many of them with a presentation of, the town's work to date. And these are some of the inspirational images from the supervisor's presentation, and really lots of great things to draw from. The ideas for this site for the future, how to connect to nature, how to create those civic spaces that can be the center of town, and places for gathering and relaxation and recreation, and of course more formal recreation facilities. Lots of different sports envisioned for this area, everything from golf, track, pickleball, cricket, baseball, softball. So, lots of activities to fit on the site. And so what we started from this week, you saw these images. These were the town's initial plans, starting with Westwood. So this image, north is to the right-hand side. You'll see Sheridan Drive on your left and Maple Road on your right. So the ideas included creating a great Central Park space with lots of passive recreation areas, trails throughout the site, and the idea for Ellicott Creek being expanded to create a large lake feature, and ideas for enhancing arts and culture on the site, including perhaps a new theater building next to the existing clubhouse that could be repurposed for arts purposes. So again, these drawings came from a lot of time and collaboration between many of you all on the call, and reflects a lot of that input. And so then this was the initial vision for the Audubon site. And so again, lots of input and ideas reflected, everything from the 9-hole golf course, the ideas, the center of the screen, you see lots of different recreation areas, baseball, softball, cricket, and soccer, pickleball. And then the left-hand side was where was proposed to have new development that could complement the park site, the senior living, mixed uses, the new field house, and potentially also new development around the North Town Center and the UBMD medical facility. So lots of different uses coming together on the site to create a central park and new hub for the town. Now, Dover Kohl, we've been working with the town since earlier this year, and there's helping to explore the potential under the new mixed-use zoning code that's been adopted. So this code is adopted and could be pulled down for use in areas that want to redevelop in a walkable mixed-use way. And it has all the rules included, all the ingredients for what makes a great place. How to design a walkable street, how to design buildings that relate to the sidewalk. So these rules are already in your code, and we have been helping prior looking at the Boulevard Central District and seeing how those rules could apply to properties there. This is an image of Boulevard Mall, what's existing today. And we had explored how over time, new pieces, new streets could be added, areas around the surrounding parking lots could be filled in with new buildings. And so slowly over time, new public spaces are added, and really the character of the area could change, again, following those rules for walkable mixed-use development. So this is here the vision for the final image. So looking at existing conditions, this is really all one big picture. So the Boulevard Central District, here you see Niagara Falls Boulevard on the left of your screen, and the Central Park site on the right of your screen. So thinking how over time in the Boulevard Central District, some of those properties may decide to redevelop and have some of that walkable, street-oriented areas like we just saw on Boulevard Mall. Perhaps some of the other sites as well might choose to redevelop. All of that working together with the enhanced transit coming through the area and creating these new centers. And then what we're going to talk about today is how the Central Park site, how that can fit into this big picture and have another additional center to serve the town of Amherst. So this week we met with I said many of you. Here's a list of some of the groups that we had. Different interests: recreation, arts and culture, golf, waterfront, and then all the different developers who are interested in the area as well, and talking about the plans that have been done so far and how we could enhance them. So here's some of the ideas. We have pages and pages of notes, and we've been going through them and using them to update our drawings. But just to give you all a sense of some of the comments we've been hearing. So for example, on the park, we've heard a lot about four-season facilities, not wanting a park that was designed only for the summer, but being able to have things that are used in the winter as well as the summer. So an ice rink that could also be a track in the summer, a sledding hill that could be used for training. We've been getting more and more emails throughout the day with additional things, so that list will grow. The ball fields, we heard lots of comments, wanting to make sure that they're set up for tournament play and, the needs and so that they work the best for the youth in the town. So also wanting to make sure that there's, adequate facilities, restrooms, concessions, enough parking, and that access to that part of the site is appropriate. So we've got some ideas. We're going to show you how we've been refining the plan. Cricket, we heard the area that was initially reserved could get a little bigger to include some warm-up space to serve those players. Pickleball, wanting to have at least 16 to 18 courts. So the last plan had 12, so we've been growing that area. In the golf area, the idea of including a putting course in addition to the 9 holes in the virtual golf facility. We heard a lot about wanting multi-purpose fields, so a place where you can just go around and kick a soccer ball and also play frisbee and do things, just have fun. Ideas about gathering spaces for families, and that perhaps those could be somewhere also nearby where a food truck could come, and you could have food truck rallies in certain times, special events. Heard about pedestrian gateways and wanting to incorporate public art, and also about connecting those pedestrian and bike paths to the surrounding paths for the university. So again, just a flavoring. I know there's lots and lots of things, but so that you can hear. There's some questions that we have that we're working on resolving. So for example, how much parking is needed on the site? And should there be one garage structure or a couple of garage structures? So we've got some ideas to share with you on that. Access, how do you circulate through the site? How many times or where can we connect to the surroundings? For example, to Maple Road or Millersport Highway, are there other opportunities for connections so that all the cars don't have to come, in and out the same way? How do we upgrade the experience on Maple Road and safety? So we heard that, it's an issue crossing between the parks perhaps, can we make that better and safer for folks to use the trail system? The field house, not sure yet how large of a footprint's needed. So we've got a footprint shown on the plan and idea for where it could expand over time. The ball fields, we've been asked about if they will have lighting. The answer, yes, they will have lighting, and we're working on the details of exactly which ones will be lit, but they're, that is in the plan. Golf, knowing where will there be the municipal 18-hole golf course in the future. And then remediation on the Westwood site, questions about what is needed there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Victor to talk through some additional inspirational images we've been looking through.
Maybe if you just back it up one so I can, from my introduction here, there's a couple things I think have become clear to me over the last week as we worked on this. First, just how vast the territory we're planning together here is. As you look at those long lists of ingredients that people would like to include in this really banquet of public space and development and economic prosperity, is there room for all of that? And I think we can now say with pretty high confidence, yes, there is. And without compromising the ability to have significant areas for open space, for long views, for environmental restoration. It's really an opportunity for both and as we look at these long lists, not either or. There's a lot of room, and I'll try to make that point momentarily. The second one is that the diagram is really strong. What the Molly and Jeff and others, the supervisor and your whole team put together before we came on the scene is really good. And if you hang out with architects and landscape architects, they throw around foreign words. One of them is PARTI, P-A-R-T-I. PARTI means the essential diagram, basically. The things that the decided approach that you're bringing to the thing in a design. And an architect does a PARTI for a building, a landscape architect does a PARTI for a garden. And in city planning and civic art, we also have that need for a fundamental organizing principle. And the one here is very, very good. That Westwood is mainly passive, mainly a nature park, but with some strategic insertions of human life and design interventions to just make it even better than it already is. And the northern part at Audubon contains room for new buildings, for income producing real estate and activities you need like the field house, and still has room for active sports and recreation in a big way. And even then still has room for public art. We were asked many times about how do we make the whole thing feel like an environment infused with art. So I hope that what we show you in the next few minutes will reassure you about all three of those. Can you go to the next one? There were all these things that were already listed, and then we were asked to see about where there were potentials for adding more. And one of the things we heard about a lot from folks involved in cultural activity and just people who care about the community was this idea that it's a place for art in all its respects, that the whole environment feels like a work of art, and there are locations for experiencing public art and the arts, including performance, theater, and music. And I just wanted to show this a little example from a park project in Charleston, South Carolina, which I think is an informative precedent. You go to the after shot here. This is just a crosswalk. It's the crosswalk for the East Coast Greenway, a bike path, a multi-user path and this is in Charleston, South Carolina. But they took on the functional need to make the crossing more evident and safer, the high visibility, but also to infuse even that with a little bit of a sense of artfulness with just the symbols on the road. And so if you think of it like that, as we zoom way out and you show you big picture things, remember that at some point, someone will, as a designer, zoom way in and do small details. Can you go to the next one? Another thing about a big green park like this is that the backdrop, the natural backdrop, forms a setting, a context for works of art, including monumental art or public sculpture, earthwork art. This is an example from that same greenway where there's a place where you can ride through the arch along the trail. And you can go to the next one. It's actually intended to be constructed out of recycled bike parts, which is kind of fun. But the point here is that there could be art everywhere for the people who have asked about that. And I think that's possible because the main diagram is one that supports adding new flourishes and activities as you think of them and as the need arises and as enthusiasm continues, because I hope that you're still not finished with this park 50 or 100 years from now, just as the people who live around Prospect Park or Delaware Park consider them works in progress forever. This is an example from Missoula, Montana that came up, and we recently redesigned the Riverfront Park. It's called Karis Park, and here's the before picture, here's the after picture. Has a lot to do with peeling back extra asphalt that really is in the wrong place. There was one feature here that we brought up and people asked about, and so just to finish off this idea of precedence, and that it's the skating facility, but instead of being a rink like you play hockey in or do the ice capades on, it's a ribbon. So you go to the next one. This will zoom in a little bit. It's meant to be a way of making, in their cold northerly climate, a Four Seasons park. Remember, from my perch here, I think of everything north of Fort Lauderdale as the frozen north, but I thought you might be reassured by seeing winter pictures of Missoula. Here's their ice ribbon, and it's just really set up so that people can watch, and they don't necessarily just go around a big oval, but they go through space. You go to the next one. And what surprised us was when that suggestion came up in Missoula, it was really, really popular. So, well, here this week, we were asked about a skate trail, that could go through the trees. That's an excellent idea, and one definitely worth exploring, an idea we have a placeholder in the diagram for. But also might be possible to add, given you got all that cooling equipment and so on, the glycol system that you use in the North Town Center, it might be also possible to add a nice ribbon like this one in the area near your new hotel and the North Town Center. So we'll look at that in the plan. Anyway, that's the example from Harriman City where how they use the ice ribbon during the winter and then how it's used during the warmer times of the year. They actually have a splash pad in it so they can switch up its way of attracting people when the weather gets warm. I'll only show you that precedent just to give you the idea that we're thinking about Audubon and Westwood as an all year round kind of place. Now, the other thing I said is that in addition to the diagram is strong and can support adding things, maybe those things if you're interested in them, I said I would show you how big this site is. So we're about to look at scale comparisons. Here, the various parcels of the Audubon site, where at the bottom of your screen, running from left to right, is Maple. And at the top left of your screen is the campus. And you can make out the size of ball fields there. Now, here at the same scale, just pasted in on the part that has been identified for development, is just a piece of Benjamin Franklin Parkway in Philadelphia. You know where Rocky ran up the steps at the end toward the art museum? That's that space. Here's the Champs-Élysées in Paris with the Arc de Triomphe at the end. These are, if you've been there, enormous spaces. And we thought this would be fun to look at because of that long east-west axis that appeared in the original diagram. Here's another long axis. That's Commonwealth Avenue in Boston. A green linear park around which the real estate development faces. And of course, when they built that park. It's a part of their Olmsted legacy. Commonwealth Avenue set up a great address in Back Bay. So it wasn't just making something green or making a wider street. It was setting up an address. So the adjacent real estate had prestige and would have the benefit of the occupants in those buildings being able to overlook this space. And when you move back and forth from one end to the other, you'd have a unique urban experience. We think that's possible here too. Okay, the next one. This is the Rambla in Barcelona, which is actually vast. If you've been there, it's an enormous space. This is the central one, Les Rambles, that is got a very, very small amount of its width devoted to cars, most of it in the center devoted to pedestrians on promenade with trees. If you ever walked from one end to the other, you know how far this is from one end to the other on the Autobahn site. Next. Just put a few of these here for fun. Closer to home, here's Main Street in Saratoga Springs. And you know how it has that famous, very slight bend in the street, which tips the storefronts into your field of vision as you move along it. There's room here for a lot of town. There's room here to do a number of addresses for a great many new buildings and blocks and streets in a whole neighborhood sort of way. This is a pedestrian-only street closer to home for the folks who visit us down in the tropics. That's Lincoln Road. Here's Meisner Park, more recently built. Meisner Park has this central grand promenade that we heard was an initial inspiration for the green in that diagram for Audubon. And just because we can't help ourselves, one from Rome, the Piazza Navona, perhaps one of the greatest public spaces in the world. And it only stretches about a third of the way between the North Town Center and the parts on the east that are meant to remain in pure park form. Next. Here's a Western example, Balboa Park in the Grand Manor. Designed for one of the world exhibitions and then kept as San Diego's significant park. They also have one of these long axes. So the scale comparison should tell you two things. One, there's a lot of room here. Here's Savannah's squares as a final example. And two, you don't have to be afraid to use it. You will, even though you add buildings and add the parking that's needed for those and add streets, have blocks, hopefully of a small enough size to make the environment walkable, you will still have room for substantial leafy green spaces. Even in the built up part on Audubon, it can remain tranquil, and all around it, even more so. Next. Now, everything we're about to show you is a draft. For plausible deniability, let me say we're about to show a number of images that your supervisor has never seen. Sorry, Brian, we just produced them in the last 25 minutes. Kim has never seen, Dan has never seen, your other elected officials haven't yet seen. It's just a draft. Everybody, please repeat after me, draft. That means everything we're about to show you can change, probably will change, get refined as we go forward. But we thought it was a good point now, after several days of work, to put our pencils down, show you what we have so far. Okay, so here's the aerial photograph and little footprints for the existing buildings on the existing conditions. And to orient you here, Sheridan's on the bottom of the picture, Maple's running across the middle, north is up, and here's the after condition. After substantial development closest to campus, retaining that long central green, we made some tweaks to that idea. Then active recreation, including baseball, including pickleball, tennis, cricket, and golf in the northern part on Audubon. And then going like a T shape down your image in the center, the Westwood site refashioned as a nature park. And I will just point out also that rectangle in the center, the gun club parcel, for which the future is not entirely certain. We know, but when we see that and we look at how it all is built up around it and how incredibly shaping of the potential for that parcel the park is, we've recommended it be in for the purposes of planning, that we've been thinking about and thinking ahead about what eventually the gun club parcel might also be. So you'll see that as well. Now, we've thought that it might be useful to just x-ray this a little bit and simplify it, just like, you know, your doctor x-rays you to make it easier to see what's inside. And the first of these x-ray diagrams is showing the existing and proposed or imagined street network. Here are the existing streets, and here is a network of drives within the park that are not all the same. They will vary, especially with regard to how wide they feel or how narrow, how generous or how intimate, and whether you are meant to go slowly along them or even more slowly along them. There's no high-speed road proposed anywhere in this map. But those pink lines on the map show you the potential for future street network, including the all-important connection at Maple Road, where these two park spaces become one. And in the upper left-hand side, the streets are in a more regular format, like a traditional town or village, interconnected blocks of streets. And on the eastern half, running between both parks, as we move into the nature park and to the recreational areas, the street network relaxes into an organic or picturesque geometry, more in the Olmsted tradition. So juxtaposing those two kinds of geometries is one of the things that we spent some time tweaking over the last several days. Next. Now, this diagram also shows in a dotted line some potential additional connections if and when the gun club parcel comes in and is developed, so that you actually make everything more whole as growth and change occurs. It makes things better rather than worse. Okay. Amy, you want to tee this one up?
Sure. So now we're looking out the big picture back over Sheridan Drive, looking towards the north. This is existing conditions. And then we've laid that, that diagram into the site so you can imagine in perspective how that would look, and started to pop up some of those building forms. So you can, this is in progress work. We haven't yet modeled the park area, so that's to come. But you can see this starter diagram begins to help to visualize the view from the south, how looking out over the park towards the university. And so we're going to start with the southern side and Westwood. And Victor, if you want, I can cover these and you can just interrupt me. And Joe, please interrupt me also.
When you do the close-up, I'll jump in.
Okay, great. So again, you know, some of the ideas that we've been looking at, and a lot of these come from the work that's been done already and the LWRP report, but in general, emphasizing on passive activities on this site. The idea kept for damming the creek and creating a lake in this area, repurposing the clubhouse for civic uses, reusing the existing golf paths as multi-use pedestrian paths. Perhaps they could be widened for that purpose, and you know, making a really great connection to the Audubon site. So we're going to go here layer by layer. So this, you know, just shows that the pond view, and again, for the connectivity, I'm going to go here to the next slide. The streets, you know, can connect through, but perhaps at certain times, certain portions could be closed off, so it doesn't create a flowing connection north to south, but rather you could decide when you open and close those. Also, there was a decision to connect to Forest and instead of Sheridan Drive. So you know, kind of. And these paths meander through the site. So again, it's not an easy north-south shot, but the idea is that the folks who are coming through here are using the park and enjoying the facilities here. Joe, is there anything else that you want to add about that?
While he's unmuting, I'll just say there's a whole suite of tools we can use to discourage anybody from even thinking about using this as a convenient daily cut through. And some of those tools are on display here already in the geometry, and there are other things we can do in the design of the streets themselves. So I think this really will be inviting to people who are coming to be here, and not very inviting at all to those who might think it's another way to get around.
And then adding onto that diagram the pathways. And so again, this is you know, looking from at, you know, at great parks and, the Olmsted tradition that's found in the region, and looking at how to create those, interesting experiences throughout the park with a real network of pedestrian ways, opportunities for public art, and interacting with, you can see on this next diagram here, the different shelters. And so, there could be, in addition to the using the clubhouse, adding the theater facility on the south, moving through the park, many different opportunities. There could be, a great building overlooking the lake, more small structures throughout the park, pavilions for events, and you can imagine having a great wedding photograph in many of these places. And the big idea, lots more.
Just add one more thing about the pathways there. This is shown with just two colors. The brighter white color for the streets that can have traffic on them, and the yellowish or sand color for those that are meant to be pedestrian paths. But within both of those, there's a whole range of different street types and trail types. So some of the trails you see here might best be mulch and very natural and just for walks through forest or garden, and others paved for universal access, and still others paved a little wider, so they work for biking as well as walking or running. So don't look at this diagram as all one thing. There's a whole range of decisions to be made about each segment or each loop in a trail system like this. Joe, did you want to say anything else about that?
I just, in looking at Olmsted's legacy, and you look at the designs that are very informal and curvy and naturalistic, but then every now and then you come upon something that's a little formal, and in that formality, they've set up great places for public art or some type of architectural folly that often children enjoy probably more than adults, because it kind of builds on fantasy of the imagination. And so, I think there's just thousands of little mini projects in here that the community can have fun with figuring out and building in the future. I'm already jealous of whoever gets to actually design this park.
And just this last slide, emphasizing, trees, the big idea. So, planting more trees in this area, and that canopy, really can help to define the character of this area. And Victor, do you want to?
Well, on that subject of more trees, we haven't even added in our diagram yet all the trees we know need to be added, or even captured every existing one.
True.
So just be prepared to see a greener, more dark green on the next version of this, where we deliberately keep the long views that are set up by the old golf course, where they make great gestures across the land, terrific places to get your wedding photographs made, but that is a backdrop and all that kind of thing. But then also closing those views a bit, or framing them with new forested areas, and doing street tree planting, which we haven't shown in a lot of the diagram here. But I think there's a pair of things can you back up one? There's a pair of buildings in the foreground that are worth talking about. One is the existing clubhouse, and the other is an imagined facility for the arts. So those could be together. They could share, as the old clubhouse is repurposed for civic use, and the performing arts type facility, should that mature here. They can share the parking, but also the terraces off the back of those toward those long views, and make amazing places to step out during an intermission, or to have a reception, or that kind of event. So we're trying to keep that thing that is wonderful already about Westwood on each corner of the plan. There's one example of that.
And if you look at the plan, you're facing kind of that long view next to the existing clubhouse, or between the existing clubhouse and the theater. If you look to your right, the pathway that leads in front of the swimming pool that goes towards the lake. So that's one of those classic kind of situations that we would try to set up where you go from a big wide open green space, you travel through a forested narrow, a path that's made narrow by the height of the trees and the canopy of the trees. And then it opens back up again with an overlook of the lake. So again, once again, the sun comes, it's nice and sunny. It's kind of a connection between green and blue. And so just that kind of range of experiences is what we see in historic paintings, and all of the great masters like Olmsted would use that as a technique, which is why we remember their parks.
Go on to the next one, Amy. So partly this is about getting ball fields lit the right way with the right solar orientation, counting up the parking spaces to make sure that works and that kind of thing. And part of it is about composition, you know, is the and Joe's comparison to the landscape painting and composition is pretty apt, because there are basically three rules. One is that the one you just described, that you go narrow before you go wide, and you maximize those contrasts so that when people go from one experience to the other, it gives you that feeling of, oh, I've arrived somewhere, or this is different. The second rule is you design not just the background, but the foreground, the middle, and the background. And it's just as Constable did his paintings, or Humphrey Repton did his landscape architecture, and then Olmsted copied that. They deliberately push things into your field of vision on these long views from the side, like the tree island in the lake, or the tree that is halfway between where we are close up and the distant trees in the distance. And this maximizes your experience of the space, makes it all seem a lot bigger. And the third rule is line things up. And one of the things you line up with is the topography. And you look at this picture toward the back, and maybe Amy, you can put your cursor over it. There's actually, you can actually see where the natural end of the Ellicott Creek floodplain area is, and where there's a bluff. And so before Ellicott Creek was channelized and forced into a narrower space to prevent flooding, it would occasionally overspill its banks, and it would go right into this meadow that you're seeing right here. And that mound at the back part of the picture is the natural edge for a potential expansion of the lake. So there's a design opportunity here. Go to the next one. You can allow for that to be somewhat intruded upon by the expanded lake, or more so. And so we've illustrated a kind of new natural edge. Discussion about damming the creek and flooding and making a lake sounds like environmental change, and it would make anybody cautious. Like, what do you mean? And the answer here is this is in a way restoration of what the creek would naturally do during flood events in the past. Now, won't just be all open water. Just like that foreground, middle ground, background idea, the edges can have grasses and emergent grasses, a littoral zone, a whole habitat really between the dry land up on the bank and the always wet part in the center of the lake. And so there's a whole design to do about what that big blue blob on our map so far. We should include some of the interiors of this building in our slideshow. Sorry we haven't got them, but it's just an amazing thing. A great inheritance that you have here. So we think that's a great place to start. We deliberately paired up new architecture with it, and it feels like the natural thing to do is to add new architecture to the park that picks up on the traditions that were applied 90 years ago, and makes the new buildings and the historical ones go together. Joe, you want to talk about Frank Hauser?
Well, Jeff was nice enough to send me some photographs. I don't know if he ran out yesterday and took them for me, but this shows from Frank Hauser Road, which runs right along the edge of the golf course. And the clubhouse is in the distance, which is a little hard to see even because of the trees. But this kind of drives that point home, that this is the big open space that was there. I guess there was a driving range. And so basically, I think what we need to do is kind of exaggerate the open space where it makes sense. So a landscape architect could figure out if maybe some of the trees need to be removed or moved. but still keeping, the best of the best. And certainly I'm not an advocate for cutting any trees down, but there might make some sense to do a little creative design in there. And even if you don't, the space is so big that it wouldn't matter so much. I would, in the center part of the plan, you can see the entrance road kind of goes up and loops around. And that was really what drove the shape of this, was looking at what's there now and kind of seeing where it would make sense to take the road and play with some of the geometry based on the existing walking paths. So I think in the earlier sketch that the city worked out was an idea that the road could separate and it could be two one-way roads instead of, I'm not necessarily showing here two-way roads or the loop being two-way all the way around. And so what that does is it cuts down on half the traffic. So that makes it easy for pedestrians and bicyclists to cross the street.
Okay.
Hopefully they're minding the speed limit.
Okay.
So, and then the road also, as it runs along the edge of the lake, I think you would want to keep some views open to the water or to the open space. So maybe the landscaping on that edge is a little thinner, or at least the understory is cleared out a bit. But then in the internal part, you could start to build up the landscaping, the trees, and basically restore forest habitat. And I don't know how well the greater community is doing with preserving forest, but this might be a place where that could be done, so that you get the kind of forest experience.
Let's go to the next one. And we're going to go a little faster now that you get the basic idea. In the northern part of the site, there's an existing lake, which we've suggested reshaping. It's a great place to do the art radio control boats, and could also be another opportunity for skating. And you'll see little red boxes placed around the map as placeholders, really, for potential architectural components, whether they're little gazebos or pavilions or follies or concessions. There are a few of those around the plan. We thought maybe a good one there with the lake, that you can experience it and enjoy it if you're just driving by, or you can actually go play with the boats or go dangle your ankles in it, and it would be used different ways different times of the year. Okay, the next one.
Just to point
Joe,
out,
we have got to move along, so I'm going to push you here.
All right.
Okay. What, you wanted to say something else?
We changed the slide on me. There were some things people.
Okay, back it up, Amy.
wanted
I'm
to
sorry.
point out.
Okay, you got the move along idea, right?
Well, the northern part of the pond that could be skating could have a comfort station in it. It's also right at the entrance if you're coming from the north to the south. So maybe the backside of it gets bermed up, and you landscape it so that you're coming in and seeing a natural environment. But then when you come around the bend, you discover you're in this kind of more formalized spot with kids skating or splashing in the summertime. And then the lake that's just to the west of that is got fish in it, and there's wading birds already using it. So putting more of a forest around it would help shelter it to be a rookery, in which case it would be an attractive place to go visit and see all the wading birds and the birds up in the trees. And that could be also a destination as you come from the south.
Now, we've got the golf people and the baseball people and the skating people and the field house people all waiting, so we're going to keep going here. Amy, let's move up along Maple just for a second here. Okay, so now this is turning our attention from the southern part to the northern part. In here, there's a lot more active stuff. You can see the Top Golf facility. You can see the fairways for golf. We've managed to fit a bit more there, and I'll let Amy describe. There's a cricket pitch. Can you put your cursor over it, please? And we're just doing orientation here. So, and then what you see in the brown color are the potential footprints for new buildings around that long east-west central green axis. Now, because of the scale comparisons analysis that we did before, we've made that smaller. We also made it so that it can have really two big public rooms with a site for a future potential civic building in the center to break down that the super scale. Amy?
So we're going to look at this a few different ways and zoom in. So first, looking over top of Maple Road, this is existing conditions. And this is the potential future conditions. So again, showing how those park spaces fit together with the potential development of the top left, the top west side of the site. And again, so we're going to go west to east and kind of go space by space. So starting on the west, near the existing hockey center, there is ideas for adding an addition to that building already in the previous plan, so to add a fifth ice rink. But we've taken a step further to see how we could integrate the block and street network from the east side through to the west. So to create an easy way to walk and bike from one side to the other. That idea of the ice ribbon, you can see is included, illustrated here on this block. So again, the idea of incorporating public spaces throughout the project. So not just park on one side and development on the other, but integrating the two, having small pocket parks throughout. And really, the idea of connecting through from one side to the other is shown here. Victor, is there anything else you want to mention?
The two darker brown rectangles are parking structures. The earlier diagram had one, but it was drawn a little supersized. We have drawn an illustration here of how you could have just as many or more parking spaces, but not put them all in just one place. That would allow easier access. And we realize it's important that there be a shared parking facility. So that's built into this. So North Town Center can get parking relief where it needs it. There can be parking for the medical center and the new field house and other uses that are coming in around here.
So it's just sliding over a little bit. So here's that central green space. And you can see, as Victor mentioned, the idea of inserting a pavilion into the green space to really create a sequence of spaces and rooms that are comfortable size. This could be further subdivided as you get into the design of that green space to create unique spaces that you would experience. But this starts to do that by having this pavilion here, a plaza area to the east, and then finally an amphitheater with long views out towards the golf course to the east. And so go ahead.
And I'm just going to say, going to the next one, I'm going to ask everybody to buckle in tight, fasten their seatbelts and lean back because we don't want anybody to get whiplash. We're about to take you from first gear to fourth gear and go from existing conditions to a long-term hypothetical maximum build out kind of future. There.
So this begins to,
before and after. I'm always worried that people are going to get whiplash during before and after pictures. And so there you go ahead.
So this begins to, you can begin to get a sense of what this space could feel like. And we're going to actually zoom in a little closer to feel the size of that space. And you can get a sense for, what those buildings could feel like along there leading out to the field house. We had an idea for the field house that, although parts of it are going to have obviously the needed, recreation facilities that might lead to having blank walls on the outside, but that there could be on this face of the building that faces the formal green, have some of the functions like offices and concessions and more active uses. Those parts of the building could be located on this side, on this facade, to create a real interesting building that terminates that green space. And so continuing to move onto the east again, we've expanded that area dedicated to cricket. We still have the soccer and the basketball, tennis areas from the previous diagram. One change here that you see in the middle is an idea for how to cross Maple Road. Victor, if you want to talk about that.
And this is my intervention. So if you love the idea, give Amy all the credit. If you hate the idea, blame it on me. But really what we feel after looking at the site closely is that Maple is over-designed and it looks like it's engineered for traffic to move at too high a speed. And we haven't even drawn in here all the trees that we know and the medians and so on that we know exist there. We also know about the understanding that should the gun club site be developed, there's probably a deep green belt along its southern edge so that Maple will remain greener. But it needs to be more than just going through the motions and having green next to the road. It's going to need to be more like, how do we convert Maple Road to be a great address, a parkway that is a worthy way to arrive at and a worthy way to live near these great Central Park spaces. So the big move is this. We'd like movement between Audubon and Westwood to feel natural, even for people who are on foot or on a bike. And we'd like to start the experience of the park on Maple rather than over next to Maple or down the driveway from Maple. So the idea for that is to put this special public space, shown here as kind of semi or slightly modified ellipse that corresponds with where Maple turns. So if you go out there and drive, you'll notice there's a bend in the road. That's where this would occur. And that's designed as a traffic calming feature, also as an entrance to the two parks from the Grand Manor. And then last, to make it possible for those who are moving north-south across Maple to cross two smaller cross sections of street instead of one bigger one. So this is beautification and it's park image and branding and so on, placemaking, but more than anything, safety. You thought we were going to do two parts of one park, and we're adding a third part. There are 3 parts to this park, including Maple Road itself.
So moving up to the north in the baseball and softball area, a couple of things that we've refined from the previous draft is access to the site. So for example, this street here that you see along the northern part of the site, we propose to extend it all the way out so that it can become another means of coming and going. So you don't have to go all the way through the interior of the site, but that would give some easier access to this part of the site. We've also looked at the road network. You might notice from this point here between the parking lots that it's actually shaded a different color. And the idea is that that part of the street will be designed in a special way to be very slow moving and could even at times be closed off to traffic so that so that when there's lots of folks using the fields and moving between fields, that's a safe and easy move to make. And so we've gotten some questions about these, and so I might ask Jeff or Kim, when we get to the Q&A part, you can help to answer some of those. But the field sizes are the same as been discussed from the previous draft, and to meet the needs of the baseball and softball. There's ideas that this area will be lighted to allow for night games and tournaments, and you see these red box areas. These are still to be designed, but the idea is that there will be areas for restrooms and concessions and other needed facilities located throughout the complex.
As you move from the north to the south, we'll leave baseball and softball behind, past the Pickleplex for pickleball, bocce, tennis is to our left. We talked about cricket already. And then here's the place where the memory and the legacy of golf and the activity of golf remains active on the site, including some new ways to get younger people involved in the sport, putting course, top golf course, and 9 holes of golf. The earlier drafts, which we showed to people earlier this week, had fewer holes. We were reminded somewhat sternly that golf is a game of 9 holes. So we've made an effort here to reintroduce 9. And also you see a lot of green blobs here in between the fairways. The idea is to use the reforestation in part of this site, even though there will be golf, to shape those spaces so that the fairway experience is more like the one you have in a classic course like Augusta National, where there are mature trees on both sides of the fairway, and instead of feeling like it's golf on top of golf when you're out there. And I think that we're getting really close to the end. Just zooming out a little bit more so you can see the Audubon piece as a whole now. Baseball and softball in the north, golf in the east, placemaking in the middle, including seniors, mixed use development, housing, medical, field house, parking, and expansions to the things around the North Town Center and the new hotel. And Amy, do you have one more zoomed out?
Yep, just
There you
looking
go.
again at the big picture view and how this fits in. And I think with that, we're gonna pause and I can stop sharing my screen and we can bring up anything that y'all want, but we wanna take some time for any questions that y'all may have. And I don't know, Kim or do y'all have anything you wanna say before we break for questions?
Not me.
Supervisor, this is your opportunity to correct and redirect each of the mistakes we just made in that first draft of a presentation to which we've invited everybody to come watch us cook it. And,
Yeah, sure. I'll offer critique in front of everybody. No, I'm just no. Look,
it's like the full disclosure kitchen in a modern restaurant.
we first of all, thank you to you and your team. I think that there's a tremendous amount of I'll say as an architect and a planner that I see this work and it's transformative from where we were just a week and a half ago, and that's a credit to everybody who's no doubt getting a little charrette fatigue by the end of a week, I'm sure. I will say that that like every plan, right? There's nuance and edits and changes and pushing of details around, and I don't want to fixate on that. What I do want to say is that the concept and breadth and what I think, I won't speak for my town board. They're here. I'm going to let them speak if they want. But for me, one of the big questions we've had all along is, could we accommodate a level of development within this creation of a park? Could we have development that works with a park? Could development be participatory in a park? This feels like it is fully engaged. It is participatory. This is a park first, and a park setting with appropriate development within it. So thank you for helping us kind of answer some long questions that we faced as a board. And we're looking forward to next steps, and we'll be in touch shortly. And thank you to everybody on this call, because I saw all the names kind of popping up earlier, and when they were screen sharing, there was a lot of people there, and I know that each and every one of you have worked significantly hard and thought about this a lot. So thank you for all participating as well. With that, let's go around my board members if they want. I'll start with Deputy Supervisor Berger if she has any comments she'd like to make.
Oh, I'm just really going to echo your points. I think they got in most of the things we've been talking about and have made things blend well. It looks like a great jumping off point. Actually, more than a jumping off point. It looks like you've pulled the pieces together, and it's been great working with you all week.
Okay. Councilwoman Buckeye joined us a little late, didn't see all of the Westwood piece, but I'm confident you'll like the Westwood piece. We'll back up and go back through that together again. But
Okay.
Councilwoman?
Yeah, thank you. I was in a 2-hour dentist appointment, so sorry I joined late. This would have been more fun, but thank you, Supervisor, that we'll catch up later on the details. The part that I did see, though, am I understanding can you talk a little more about the connection across Maple Road? Is there going to be like a traffic circle? That's what it looked like on the diagram. So that's the question that I have. Thank you.
And I will say, Councilmember, we've created just a first version, and there could probably be many variations on it as we study it more closely, get with the county. After all, it's a county road, and incorporate all the different concerns that will obviously come up. The basic concept we illustrated was an elliptical version of a modern roundabout, so that it would, but I don't think it's necessary for it to be a pure exact geometry. It's a little larger than a typical modern roundabout. But it would have the same basic principle, which is the way you enter and exit is safe. Safe is turning in and out of a driveway. But it's a slow speed maneuver, and that's the big idea. We drew an ellipse or a modified ellipse, flattened it a little bit, lengthened it a little bit. I imagine there's a more formal version. There's a softer version. There's a lesser. So I would say to be determined on the exact geometry of it. Big idea is let's use public space to link these two public spaces. And the most important existing public space is the one that's been a public space all along, which is Maple Road.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, I see it is elliptical. Thanks.
Hey, Councilman Lavin is joining us from his service base. Councilman, are you on the phone still?
Still here, but I'm joining you from the NCCC COVID Testing Center. The one comment I did want to make, I really enjoy the idea of the pocket parks in the kind of development area. So it offsets some of the, development, so to speak. Those pocket parks to me are good for people who are working in that area, people who are living in that area. So I was really excited that those were incorporated into this site plan.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and Councilman Zucala, you had any thoughts? Welcome those.
Yes, I think it's an excellent presentation. I didn't expect perfection, but this is pretty close to it. Two things I really like. I like the idea that you split the parking garages up. I think that was very wise. And I love this skating ribbon. I really do. I'm enthusiastic about this. This is really beautiful.
The last thing that I want to do is acknowledge that there's been a lot of tension around projects in this area for a long time, and indeed property ownership has gone through some transitions and changes. So to the extent that Mark and Dan Hamister are still on the phone, thank you for working with us to get to the point where we have a draft MOU. Thank you for being able to lead by example, to make sure that we could find ways to negotiate, and we'll continue to work forward in that manner. And I'd also like to thank people at Simonelli, people at Paul Kolkmeyer, who I think was on the call, and people from Uniland, whether it's Michael Carl Jr. or Kalina. They've all been participating as well in all of this. We'll have more to come. Victor, thank you to your team. If anybody has questions, comments, I'd ask you to send them to Kim in our planning department, or Julie in my office. We'll kind of batch those and get them into the mix. All right. So thank you very much, Victor. I don't know if I'll leave it to you if you have any closing remarks you'd like to make.
When I get this many people together who are interested and stay interested for a whole hour on city planning stuff, I couldn't be more excited because, I think we don't get the cities we want by just hoping for them. We get them from drawing lines on a map. They don't come from Santa Claus. We have to do what you're doing this week, which is draw lines on a map and say, how about if we did it this way? And that's what you're doing. So don't stop.
And I'll say this to your company. I didn't know how these things would work in Zoom format. They benefit us. We got 2 named principals. Joe, thank you for all of the work. I'm so impressed with what's going on at Westwood. So to have
4 principals, Amy and James are also principals.
Okay, good. Then I have to say that at the end of the day, your team's done a great job here. We'll look forward to working with you in moving forward here. And is Dan Howard still on the call? Dan's been in and out of like 2 meetings all at once. So
I'm here, Brian.
Dan, your team and planning department did a great job as well. Thank you for getting us to this point. It really it's really credit to your team to get us into the first concepts, and then a great job this week. So I'll see everybody soon. I'll talk to everybody soon. Thank you very much, and have a great 4th of July weekend. Might not have fireworks, but we can still celebrate everything that we have here in this country. So thank you.